Welcome to the AVNI Interviews. We're your hosts, Eric Bork and Mikey Taylor.
What up?
We're the co-founders of AVNI, a brand for entrepreneurs. Here on the AVNI Interviews, we interview people doing the work they want and the lifestyle they love. Before we get started, I just really quickly want to give a shout out to our academy. We've launched it. The members are already getting new clients. We're getting emails and texts telling us that people have successfully started their own businesses, and one of our clients just moved out of his house, or one of our members just moved out of his house, got his own place. Things are going good. Shout out to Anthony. So anybody interested in starting your own digital marketing agency, it is what changed my life. It is what enabled me to go from hit or miss video work to getting solid retainers from clients. So if that's of interest, visit the URL avnidigital.com or go to our website. And today's guest, Mikey, who's today's guest?
Yeah, this is gonna be a little bit different. Today's guest is, we're gonna interview Eric Bork.
I'm in the hot seat tonight.
I'm gonna interview Eric Bork. This will be my first time running through a full interview where I'm kind of controlling
You're
it, right?
driving, all right. Well,
So Eric Bork was a professional skateboarder, co-founded AVNI as my partner in AVNI, and has been one of my closest friends for almost 20 years now. He was the pro skateboarder when I was a kid coming up, and he did a lot to help me get in the industry, and we've just remained really close through both of our careers, and now to come back and be doing this together is it's cool. It's really special. So today we're going to go through Eric's story and all the crazy experiences he's gone through to get here. So we'll start in the beginning, man.
Right.
How did you become a pro skateboarder? You did it at a time where it was, to me, seemed even harder than when I got in.
Yeah, it definitely was. And I remember at one point my sponsors telling me, "We made you." And back then they really did make you. There was no, what's it called? SoundCloud rappers or musicians. You had to be put on back then. So I've skated since I was 8 years old. I got a skateboard at the flea market, and I really wasn't that good at it. And I remember when I got good at it, this is like one of my favorite things to share. I was about 16, so I'd been skating for 8 years, and I always loved it. But Welcome to Hell came out with Jamie Thomas, and his part, I watched it, and it was like the thing I've been the most infatuated with in my whole life. I grew my hair out. I would literally watch the videos like 30 minutes, his part's 3 or 4 minutes. I would watch that video 15 times a day. No, 30 times a day sometimes. Back then you rewound, and I would watch his video part over and over and over, and then I would go out, and Skate Street opened in Ventura, and it was like a training facility. So my day, this is how I kind of got good at it. My day involved waking up, watching Jamie Thomas and Welcome to Hell about 15 times, going to the skate park, skating for 4 hours, and then jumping in the car. I had a pickup truck with a cover, putting my friends in the back, driving around and looking for obstacles. This is a few years before I met you, and just repeating what we had just watched in Welcome to Hell. So during that couple years when we were doing that, I was able to get better at it and get sponsors.
How'd you get your first sponsor?
Well, actually, I started my own company. So that was the beginning of me being an entrepreneur.
So you had no sponsors at this point? You were just a kid
skater? Well, when I was 13, I got sponsored by like the local shop, right? But that doesn't count. And then when I was 16 and we were all skating at this park, I was like, we need to start our own brand. So it was called Persona. We had Carlos De Andrade from Brazil and like some locals on the team. And our friend's dad invested, I think he invested like $8,000. We went to ABC in Costa Mesa, got our boards made, and then we sold them at local shops. And we probably made about a total of $200.
Okay. That's young to like, I mean, when I was 16, I wasn't thinking about starting my own company. That's pretty early on to go through that.
And that was actually a great lesson too, because we had we had 4 partners. And we were all 25% owners, including my friend's dad, who basically gave us $8,000.
Yeah.
And so it was a great experience. And then what happened was Santa Cruz Skateboards approached me and said, "We want to pay you." And Santa Cruz was who I went pro for.
So had the company stopped at this point, or were you still doing the company?
Yeah, and I was called to sell out and all that. But
So wait, this company was still going, and
Yeah.
you got an offer from Santa Cruz while you were still doing the company.
Yeah.
And you decided to leave the company to ride
Yes.
for Santa Cruz.
yeah.
Was that hard?
Kind of, but I mean, this is a very valuable lesson in lots of industries, is that when you're trying to break into any industry, in my opinion, you need someone that knows the industry. You need an insider that can like show you around the industry. And I was getting, in local videos, but there was no way I was going to make a mark in the skateboard industry without having someone inside of skateboarding. Put back then, you had to get in the magazines and you had to get, in the videos. That's how it worked.
Yeah, we had less control back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So you quit your company, or what happened?
Yeah.
You closed the company? What
I
happened?
mean, we weren't making money. We were basically like, we either have to build a company and, dedicate our lives to it, or else I'm going to go this route. And so I basically told everybody it was kind of dissolving. We weren't making any money.
Okay. Okay.
So that's how kind of that went. And then I basically went for Santa Cruz. They started sending me to contests and sending me to shoot with photographers and be in videos. They're closely connected with Thrasher, so I had an independent ad. We'd go skate San Francisco with like Brandon Biebel, Stefan Janowski, and then you would come with us on trips and a couple years later. But that's kind of like how it started. I started integrating into the skateboard industry.
Gosh, it's crazy when you just said I had an independent ad. I remember how big of a deal it was back then.
Back then, it was a huge deal.
Well, gosh, an ad like means nothing now,
It doesn't mean
but
it, yeah.
it was a really big deal to get your
Yep.
first ad, or have an ad with someone like independent.
Yep.
So how long did you ride for them before you turned pro?
2 years.
2 years.
2 years, yeah.
And then they turn you pro. That's right around the time we started hanging out.
Yep.
You're pro for a year, and then what happened?
So I went through a really bad breakup. The girl's super cool girl, still friends with her. But we dated when we were, 20 years ago, and I got super religious. And I grew up Mormon. And when you're Mormon, you feel a lot of pressure to go on a mission. And so, I started feeling pressure to leave for 2 years and go on a mission. And so I did it. I gave up skateboarding and went on my Mormon mission. And I mean, I don't go to church anymore. But yeah, I was raised Mormon and went on a Mormon mission.
Where did you go on your mission? What was that experience like?
Yeah, so it's funny, man, because, and we can talk about this more, but for a long time, I was just really angry at religion. And now that I'm like not anymore, I'm able to like remember and have good memories of it. And it was the craziest thing in the world.
Where'd you go?
I went to Guatemala, and I lived on the coast of Guatemala. I lived in the mountains of Guatemala, and I lived in the city of Guatemala. In the city, I saw someone get murdered right in front of me. In the mountains, I was on the most beautiful lake in the whole world, they say, Lake Atitlan. And I mean, I just have, it's funny, man, because it's like very nostalgic to think about it. But it was crazy, man. I lived with families that literally had, no joke, they had dirt floors, and there's a gap about that big underneath the corrugated metal walls and 2x4s. And 7 people lived in those homes. And we hung out with them all the time, like every week. It was an absolute crazy experience. And I learned to speak Spanish. I speak Spanish fluently. And most of the time when I start speaking, people are like, how do you talk that good? Well, it's because I lived with, you have companions. And so I lived with someone from Honduras or Guatemala for like 3 months, and they didn't speak English. So they'd be like, teach me English, I'll teach you Spanish. So it was the craziest thing, man. And yeah, I just, at this point, like some of my good friends are Mormon, right? So it's all good. It's all positive memories at this point. But it was a pretty crazy experience.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what was, I mean, I know this, but I'm going to ask you because I remember the day you told me this, but were you kind of thinking like, okay, I'm a pro skateboarder, I can go on my mission and then I can come back and be a pro skateboarder again? Was that your original idea?
You know what? Yes and no. So
did you know you were fully stepping away from skateboarding forever?
I knew that was probably going to happen. And I remember telling people that I was going to do it because that was always my dream my whole life was to be a pro skateboarder my whole life since I was 8 years old. And I had just done it. Like I accomplished it. And so I was like, I'm going to do this so that I accomplished my dream. And then I did accomplish my dream. And then I just kind of threw it away.
So there's a lot of people I know that set a goal like I'm going to be a pro skateboarder or I want to have my own shoe, right? And they hit that peak and then kind of that's it. Like that was their goal, and then they kind of lose. I think the excitement of them chasing their goal. Did you feel that as a pro skateboarder?
No, not at
all. No, you
all.
felt like you had a lot more to do.
I felt like
because like I'm looking at going, dude, when I'm like was in skateboarding, dude, there is no way I could have given that up. That would have been the hardest thing I'd ever decided to do, right?
Yeah.
And you did it after being pro for a year. That couldn't have been something that was easy.
No, here's the funny thing. And I don't ever bash religions, right? I respect, I'm very respectful of every religion. Like I never would criticize anybody for race, religion, anything. But in my case, it didn't affect me at the time. But when I got back, I tried to be a skateboarder again, and then it kind of hit me what I had really given up.
Yeah.
And that's when it got hard.
Yeah.
It was, and I know you saw a lot of this, but some of it you didn't because I was out of state. I was depressed. I was like, what did I do? In my case, I think it was a mistake. And the analogy I always use, and I don't want to, anybody that's Mormon or wants to go on a mission, I'm not saying they shouldn't. I'm just saying in my case, I feel like it was not the best choice. The analogy I use is imagine if you work your whole life to be a lawyer, and then since you're 8, you go through law school, you do it, you graduate, and you're a lawyer, and then you quit, and you can never do it again. That's what it felt like for me.
Yeah.
It was my dream my whole life, and I went through like a long period of what did I do?
Yeah.
And especially when I started, working a normal, boring job going, this is my life now. Like, and then at the time, now it's kind of not as bad because people are at the end of their careers, but you were out traveling the world, The guys that I came up with were like Stefan Janowski, Brandon Biebel, Chris Cole, who else?
Paul was part of our group, Spanky.
Yeah, and I was watching everybody literally live this, the life of a pro athlete, especially skateboarding, because like NFL, NBA, you're in one place most of the time. Like skateboarding, you just go travel the world and have fun, So it sucked. There was a time where it was really, really rough.
So what was it like? You're a pro skateboarder, you go on your mission, which you're kind of removed from the world in a sense.
Yeah.
In our world, right?
Oh yeah.
You're thrown back into our world, but it looks completely different, right? You have to go get was that your first job?
It wasn't my first job. I've worked since I was 12, but it was I went and I worked for OGO, the backpack company, for 5 years.
Okay, so what was that transition like? You go out of your mission, now you're basically corporate America. What was your position at OGO?
So I started as the skate team manager. I became the skate category manager. And then the last year I was there, I did key accounts, where I managed the entire process of selling backpacks to Best Buy, Sport Chalet, and Target.
Was it, when you went on your mission, you started working for OGO, was that a plan to always want to stay connected to skateboarding? Did you pick OGO because it had something to do with skateboarding?
Yeah, and the funny thing is that for me, like, when people talk about like they had a relationship and it was like the one that got away, I don't have that. Like there's no one I've dated that I feel like I should be with. I'm totally happy with Olivia. I found the right one for me is the way I should say it. But to me, skateboarding is the one that got away. It's like so hard. Now I'm good, right? But there was years where I would just get depressed and think about it. So I kind of just wouldn't think about it.
Yeah.
I would just shut it out of my mind so that I didn't have to like face the fact that, you know, I lost what I had worked for my whole life.
Yeah.
So yeah, it sucked. And the one other thing that was hard for me is I felt a lot of pressure to get married. And I can't, you know, blame the Mormon church for that, but I can say that I definitely felt pressure to get married very young, and I married the wrong person, and then we weren't compatible at all, and then got divorced. We got married after like 9 months, and then got divorced. So that was also a really tough one for me.
Did it ever feel like you just couldn't catch a break, or did it just ever feel like your whole life was just like imploding on you? I mean, you're out in Utah.
Yeah, it was.
Like, was there like a truly like dark time?
It was insanely dark. I literally, no joke, would ride my bike around by myself at night, and people would be like, who's that weird guy that rides his bike around by himself? And I would sit in the hot tub by myself. And
this is after you got divorced?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and because I remember you would always call me and go, dude, this is so weird, I'm like old and creepy. You were like 23, right?
Yeah.
Because Mormons, dude, a single Mormon at 24 is not normal.
I was 27 when I got divorced, but that's old.
Oh, you were 27.
That's
okay.
old though.
Okay.
And all the girls get married young, so the single girls were all like 21, 22.
So you're in Utah, you're working at OGO.
Yeah.
You're married. Mm-hmm. You get a divorce.
Yep.
But you're still at OGO and in Utah.
Yeah.
How is that? Like, look, I don't want to bash on the religion also,
yeah.
but I know that the Mormon religion does put a lot of pressure on you to do things.
Yep.
Right? You're in Utah, which is a heavily Mormon
it's all
community.
Mormon, yeah.
Right? You're now old-ish and divorced.
Yeah.
Right? Dude, I can't imagine being in that environment. That had to been.
So to put it into perspective, I was so miserable and unhappy that I packed everything in my car. And to me, the way I look at it is anything can become a vice or an addiction. And I am very addictive. And I think I just burnt myself out on it. I think I threw everything away and just went so hard at it that I basically burnt myself out on it. And I wasn't able to think about it for 5 years after I stopped going to church because it was so hard for me to think about.
You weren't able to think about
the Mormon church. It would make me angry. I was very angry. I would get mad. So I broke down, packed my car up, and I said, you know what? I'm a pretty good person. You know what I mean? Because I felt bad about myself because I was divorced and this. I was like, I'm a pretty good person. Like, look around in the world. I'm not like a terrible person. I'm gonna go live a normal, just like be a good person life. And that's what I did. Drove home to my parents' couch.
Okay.
That's what I did. So that's what happened. Yeah, it was awful.
Did you quit OGO?
I was fired.
What were you fired for?
This is a good story though for our audience and talking about business. So I learned a lot at OGO. Skateboarding was not a fit there. And while I was there, we went through, let me just answer your question. They were downsizing and basically they were not a fit for skateboarding. They exited skateboarding, and it's actually a funny story. They fired me a year before they actually fired me, but it was the same month that my wife left me. And so they're like, you're fired. And I remember going home being like, I actually had a panic attack. I've never had one before. I'm 27. I go home, I'm like, I didn't know what's happening. I had a panic attack. So I go back in, I'm like, I'm not fired. And they looked at me and they were like, okay, you're not fired.
Really?
Oh yeah. So then they hired me back, and they had a meeting with all the executives. It's like an 80-person company back then. So they had to, clear it with the executives, and they're like, look, we can find somewhere for him. Like, he's really, like, he needs this job, and they found a job for me. So I did key accounts. So while I was there, we went through the book Good to Great. And it's a really good business book. So I got to see a company who was in financial trouble. They initially started by doing ASI, which is where you make clothes, backpacks, coffee mugs. They didn't do coffee mugs, but for other people, like you print on them. right? That's how they started making their business. Well, that was their whole business. But when you do that, they made golf bags for like Callaway. Well, that business went away overnight. They lost like $5 million like overnight, right? So they started building a brand, which was, you were there, you were a part of the team, and so was like Paul Rodriguez, Tori Pudwill, Ty Evans, Atiba Jefferson. We made camera bags for them. So the lesson that I learned there was that don't enter into a market that you're not a fit for. They weren't a fit. It wasn't a part of their DNA. And while we were reading Good to Great, it basically says, what are you the best in the world at? And that's a great a great question for companies to ask is, what are you the best in the world at? And then be the best at that. They were the best at making these crazy technical cool bags. That's the DNA of their company. They were not the best at marketing. They were terrible at it. And remember, we would do ads and I would send them to you and be like, we can't put this out. It's too bad.
I remember, yeah.
And so they were terrible at marketing. They were also bad at sales, very bad at sales. They had golf reps calling on skate shops, right? So eventually they just kind of realized that they weren't a fit in the skate market. And they were kind of mad about it because they had invested a lot of money into it. And so they decided to exit skateboarding, which that was when they let go of the team and everyone.
I just got to ask you, I'm so curious now. I understand like staying in your lane and doing the thing you're best at, right? Mm-hmm. Something like sales though, you kind of have to be good at, right? Did they do anything?
So they're actually, from the last I've heard, they're doing really well now. And it's because they've focused on creating like these products specialized for carrying like certain parts of a dirt bike or something, you know? So I'm not describing their company. I'm not in the inside of their company anymore, so I don't know. But last I talked to them, they made that change. They focused on function and design and the technical design of the bags, and they're doing really well. Like you'll see on street bikers, every street biker has an OGO bag. It's like this cool shell looking bag. And they're doing really well at that.
Yeah.
So that, you know, they just weren't a fit for skateboarding. And they eventually just kind of just said, we don't like it. Yeah. And so they exited.
So did you know what you were going to do? Like OGO goes away, marriage ends, you're sitting in Utah. You were just like, dude, I just need to get out of here and figure it out.
Yeah. And I think the biggest lesson I've ever learned, and this is kind of what we're doing with AVNI, my biggest lesson is find the thing that you're good at, that you love, and forget the other things. Focus on that thing and figure it out. Because I kept making decisions with my back against the wall and selling cars. So I came home and I sold cars. Or I sold, you know, a friend of ours, Stuart, right? Gave me a job selling to dentists. And I eventually just was like, this is not a fit for me.
You did a lot of things that weren't a fit for you.
I did a lot of things that weren't a fit for me. And every one of those, I don't regret, but I look at as a mistake because it's time I could have been putting towards what we're doing right now, which is what I love and what I've always wanted to do.
So I know how many things you did that weren't a good fit.
Yeah.
What was going on through your mind when you did them? Was it like just a survival and I need to make money and I just picked it?
Yep.
So there was no like breakdown of like, okay, I think I could excel at this. This is something that would make me happy. It was strictly just shit, I need money.
Kind of. So
like, let's pick one. What was the first thing you did when you got home?
I think it was work.
ISIS?
That was when I was still living in Utah.
Okay.
And that was awful, right? I would probably say selling cars, if we want to pick one.
Okay. So like you're at your mom's house. I know your brother sells cars. That's probably where it came from.
Yeah.
And he was like, Eric, you should sell cars.
Yeah.
You were like, okay. Like, did you put thought into it?
So the way that my brain works is I know what I want. I always knew what I wanted, right? Since I was 14, 15 years old, I read Tony Robbins and Brian Tracy, and I wanted to have a company that helped people do what they want in life. That's always what I've wanted, right? The hard part for me is that I didn't know how to make money so that I had time to do what I wanted. And so I always was doing something that I had to do so that I could wedge my way out and do what I wanted to do. So none of the things that I did were intended to be long-term, but the problem is that when you're spending your entire focus going towards those things that go in a different direction, there's a conflict. So I always knew what I wanted. I just was trying to survive. And survival mode is, to me, the biggest enemy of doing what we want in life.
You know what? I would totally agree with you, but now I'm on this whole David Goggins thing, right? And he's all about like suffering and survival, right? Which like
I would say is different what he's saying.
I think so too. I would totally agree with you. I think like being in a state of panic is not a state of offense, right? It's a state of defense, I think, and it's hard to drive and build towards your goal when you're in defense.
Yeah.
Right? So you start selling cars, don't like it.
Yeah, hated it. Worst thing ever.
What was that? Wasn't
another one I did actually that I actually really loved was working at a restaurant.
Yeah.
I loved being a server. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. You're working with a team, you're all friends, you go out afterwards. Like that's one part of my journey that it was the lowest paying, but I actually like really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But real quick on survival mode, to frame up survival mode, I would say this is how I think of it. When you're hungry, if you literally don't have food, you're not gonna think about anything else. So that dream of me doing this company, for me personally, and I don't know if I'm like this or if everyone's like this, there's no quicker way for me to go into survival mode than to have my bank account have no money into it. I'm personally awful at it. If that happens to me, when it used to happen to me a lot, even if I know I have money coming, because cash flow is an issue sometimes, it's just that I go into like, I literally have no food. That's all I can think about. So that for me, that's survival mode, and that's why I say it's the enemy. The suffering part, I would say, is like picking something and then being willing to suffer through getting you to somewhere you want to go. That's, for me, that's kind of how I separate survival mode from suffering, if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense.
So I think a lot of people get stuck in a sense of whether it's survival or comfort or security, right? True. They're doing something that they don't like, but they've got a wife and kids at this point, or they can't take the risks that they possibly could have taken when they're 22, right? You didn't have kids at this point, but you were kind of stuck, right?
Absolutely.
What happened to, like, was there a aha moment? Was there an instance where you were like, enough?
Yeah, there was a moment, and it was basically, I was selling dental marketing, and that is one of the most rugged jobs I've ever had, because the second, as a cold calling salesperson, you walk into a medical office without a big brand behind you, a big medical brand behind you, they want you out. They want to get back to what they're doing. They're instantly trying to get you out of their office. So I thought I knew how to sell before. I had no idea how to sell. I learned how to cold call and how to sell, but it was so hard. I hated it. It wasn't me, and I have a hard time like trying to convince people to do things they don't want to do. And so I one day, and me and Stuart talk about this all the time. He still does it, and once in a while he'll hit me up and be like, "You're the only person that gets it. This happened today." I'm like, "I get it." So I called Stuart. I'm like, "Dude, I can't do it. Like, thank you for the opportunity." And he was super cool about it. And I went skating. I said, "I don't know what it is, but I went to Beeble Skate Park with you." And I picked up an iPhone and I started filming, and I said, "I want to make videos." And I said, everything I do from now on is going to push me towards the end goal that I want to do. That's it.
So you made the decision that you were only going to do things that got you closer to your goal.
Yep.
But you weren't making money? You didn't know how you were going to make money?
I didn't care.
No.
This is where the Goggins comes in, right?
Okay.
I did not care. I would have been homeless. I would have literally lived in I didn't care, because I was so tired. I had done the security thing, hated it, and I had a corporate job I bought a house, I owned a home, and I didn't care because none of it led me to being actually fulfilled in life and being happy with my life. It just wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
So, and the hard part about this whole thing during that time was that at any moment I could have gone and gotten a corporate job. There was like 7 or 8 years I was figuring all this out, right? And my mom is the ultimate, like, she's worked at the school district my dad's entrepreneur. My mom, entrepreneur minded, my mom is go get a job, like stabilize, and she's taking care of us, like benefits, right? And she was just like, why don't you go get a job? Like, you can go get a job right now. And I would get job offers and I would say no. And she'd be like, what are you doing? I'm doing what I want in life. And I just had to make the call that I wasn't gonna, take the urgent, payout for what I really wanted to do.
Were your parents tripping on you?
My dad, no. Because
he understood it.
My dad's an entrepreneur. My dad started his own company. And he's super supportive of it.
Yeah.
My mom is not entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So
because it had to be kind of crazy for them. Like, you go on your mission and you're just like back and running with it, right? You have your corporate job, you're married, a home, you're living the dream that probably your mom.
I was literally the American dream.
And then all of a sudden,
Utah,
you're back at home at 29, 30 years old.
Yep.
Right? You're making no money.
27, yep. No money, divorced, not going to church, which my parents still go to church, and they're cool. Like, my parents are cool about it. But yeah, I was that's pretty much as a man, that's I can't say as low as it gets, but that's when you feel like you have no...
You just feel zero, right?
Yeah, you feel zero, yep.
Yeah, I get that. Okay, so you start filming, you're coming on sessions with us.
Yeah.
What happens?
I start doing videos here and there for doctors. I went to a doctor and said, can I do a video for you? And she said yes. And then I started taking that video and showing other doctors.
I gotta go a step back.
Yeah.
Because there was a point where I felt like every 2 weeks you were like, dude, I have no money. I need money. I'm borrowing money.
Yep.
Right? There was like probably a good 6 months where you were borrowing money from people.
Yep.
Right?
Oh yeah.
And then you kind of decided you had to go do something and make some mony. Yeah. Is that right? And then you started creating videos?
Yeah, and the hardest part about it is how it affected my family. I am lucky that I wasn't married, didn't have kids, because I may have had to make different choices. But my parents definitely, even though they were like, why don't you get a job? They still helped me out like so much. The worst thing I ever did, by the way, was drive Uber.
Yeah.
That was the worst. That was my least favorite thing I've ever done.
Huh.
People are just rude. I have a hard time with rude people.
I get it, but I'm surprised that, on the other hand, your favorite thing was being a server. Right. You're a server dealing with rude people, and you're driving an Uber dealing with rude people. Yeah. Right.
I could break down the dynamic, but it's a different dynamic.
But you did bring up a good point, and I do kind of want to say this. There's times in your life where you're able to take on more risk, right? Yep. 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. Yeah. Dude, you guys should be going nuts in that time, right? Because if you lose everything, you can rebuild it, and there's nothing like really on the line. It's before a home and kids and a wife, right? So I think that's just a good point for everybody to know. When you can take risks, take it, right? Yeah. So you start building clients. You start getting clients.
I start getting clients.
You're creating videos for them.
And then one of the clients said, hey, we have someone managing our social media that's either charging us too much. They had someone do it that was like a big agency charging way too much. And then they had someone else doing it, and they were just like, we need someone to do our social media. Would you do it? And I said no. And then I'm like, wait, let me think about it. So I went home. And I said,
why'd you say no at first?
Because I was so focused on starting what's now AVNI that I didn't want to do anything that would take me away from that. And then I went home and I thought about it, and I'm like, you know what? This is how much time I'll have to spend on it. I'm going to start an agency. Instead of just doing video work, hit or miss, I'm going to get a retainer, and this is going to be my first client. And I did it.
Did you know how to do it at that point?
I knew how to do certain things. I had built websites. I was talking to you and everybody else every day about social media. I knew how to make videos. So I knew how to do part of it, but was I like up and running? No. Yeah. I wasn't. And one of the biggest mistakes I made is I kind of overpromised. And then I later had to like sit down and say like, this is what we're really gonna do. So that's also important not to do, is.
Yeah, but I think it's hard sometimes. Like sometimes you're like, you want to get the sale, right? So you're just like, if you just like spit out all this crazy shit, you're going to get it.
Yes.
Right? You really got to hold yourself back from that. I get excited and do that also.
Well, it's funny though, because Stuart, and he's one of the, Stuart Fott, one of our friends, when he started his company, I watched him go out and get 30 clients with no product.
Yeah.
And it was one of the most fascinating things I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And I watched him do it, and then in the span of a month, he was making a lot of money.
Yeah.
So there's that side of it, of like being like, don't let it hold you back. And then there's the side of it you're talking about, right? Which is where I was talking about, don't overpromise, right?
Yeah. So you take on this position managing social media. At what point did you go and did you like actively go get other clients?
So from there, I looked at it and I said, aha, I have found something that makes me independent. It makes me an entrepreneur. And I can make a lot of money doing it. So I went out and I decided to get more clients, and within a couple of months, I was making $8,000 to $10,000 a month.
Yeah.
So that for me was where the change actually happened.
Yeah.
And you helped me with you went to some of the meetings and stuff, but you saw the process. That was really the changer for me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think sometimes it's like, sometimes you just need like a little like friendly like push or some support, and it changes everything, right?
Fully.
Like I don't think people realize like how much they could actually do. It's just like sometimes you like, dude, you got this. And then, So why don't you explain how we got to AVNI?
So the story I always like to frame it up with is, you were pro skating. I went on a trip, a DVS shoe trip way back in the day, and you were pro skating, and I was sitting there on the stairs reading a book, right? Like, reading books has always been what I've wanted to do. But my whole thing is, it takes 20 to 40 hours, depending on which book, to read a book. It's too long. And I remember thinking like, if I could just learn faster, that was my whole thing, is I want to learn faster. And so I was like, I'm going to create a company where people can learn faster. At the same time, you were going through...
I remember you like showed me this whole like, it was kind of like a mini business plan, and you had all these symbols.
Yeah.
Right. And Eric's, I'm like just skating, and you're like, dude, I want to like have people learn better and quicker. So I created these symbols, and this symbol means this, and this symbol means that. I remember looking at you going, dude, you are so out of your mind, but like, that's cool. But it's just funny to look back that far, and like, I didn't have the insight to really know what you wanted to do. But it is crazy to see like from 10 years ago, when I remember you showing me that, to like what we're doing now, it like really is what you wanted to do.
Well, the funny thing is, and this is where I got that. I read a book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And in the book, he talks about the age of wisdom, which really is the age of intelligence, because they just didn't really understand what wisdom would be. But you're starting to see actually the age of wisdom, or the age of intelligence, artificial intelligence, where people are learning faster. And so when I read that when I was younger, I was like, okay, we're in the age of information, or we were, right? Which is boring. It's sitting at a cubicle, pushing numbers, being an accountant. I don't like that. I want to be in the age of wisdom. And then, one more story I forgot to tell about OGO, which really is kind of the catalyst for what we're doing. And I'm going to jump back for a second here. I remember one day, people would always hit me up to do backpack companies back in the day. Like, people would be like, hey, Eric, you're at OGO, let's start our own backpack company. I'd say, no. And the reason why is, one day I walked into the warehouse at OGO, giant warehouse, and I saw a crate. And I think it was the president was like, that's $700,000 worth of backpacks that came back from Journeys, because Journeys tried to sell skate backpacks and they didn't sell as per the contract. So they sent $700,000 worth of inventory back into the warehouse. And I remember sitting there and looking at it going, I never want to own a physical product. I never wanted to do it. So when I heard about digital products, and I heard you could make money with information, and then I connected that with the age of intelligence, I was like, that's my world. That resonates with me. That's what I want to be a part of. And then I started seeing people do it, like Tai Lopez And they were doing this Tony Robbins style stuff, but they were teaching people how to do, and I saw this world booming, and I started listening to Gary Vaynerchuk, who back then had very little, almost no follow. I remember I followed when he had like 32,000 on Instagram or something like that. Before Instagram was even around, I think. So when I saw this world emerging, it was like, yes. And then you were going through the end of your skate career. And I remember you were doing, you started to talk about, doing courses on finances because you've always been really good with your money. And we were kind of just doing two separate things. And then I remember we would have talks, like I would go over to your house and we'd talk about, your career and stuff. And then it was like, we were both working on this, and it's like, dude, like, let's do this together.
Yeah.
And it was so funny because I've never wanted to do this with anybody. It's always been like, there's one thing. I'll give away whatever for whatever other job or industry, but this is the one thing I've always wanted to do, and I've never wanted to partner up. And then I was like, dude, you're headed there, I'm headed there, let's do this, right? And we were seeing the market going like, at first it was so bad. At first you'd see the guys, and there's still a lot of stuff that's like really cheesy, but we were starting to see people like Gary Vaynerchuk emerge and being like, yeah, and then he hits you up on Twitter and it's like, let's do this. So at that point, you brought in the branding, and we came up with this cool looking brand called Elon. We didn't get the trademark.
That's right.
So we brainstormed for how long names take us, like 2 months.
Well, dude, it was funny. I feel like it took us 2 months to come up with Elon. And then we lost the trademark.
Yeah.
And I feel like we came up with AVNI in 15 minutes after that.
Yeah.
And we were panicking.
Yeah.
I was panicking.
Yeah,
dude.
because we had to launch
upset.
something. I can't remember what it was, but we had to come up
we had
with
a deadline on when we were going to launch the podcast. It was like,
That's
trademarks, just for anybody who doesn't know, trademarks can be such a bitch. And for me personally, names take me forever.
Totally.
So it's always like, whatever, it takes me a long time to get a name. You get a name, it looks good for trademark, and then you go through the process. You don't know right away. A lot of times it takes 2, 3, 4, 6 months, and then you find out you don't get it. And it's like so crushing because you wasted so much time. And I was in a panic.
And our lawyers found we gave them the green light, and they found it in like 10 minutes. They were like, there's a company called Elon. We're like, what?
Yeah,
we just spent 2 months coming up with this name.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and trademarks, like that's a good one. Like I just talked to someone about it yesterday. They're expensive. They're super expensive.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a bait and switch industry where they'll say, oh, you just do this, this, and this. What it costs $1,000. And then they hit you back with
they're like Spirit Airlines. It's insane.
Yeah.
They're the same trademark attorneys like Spirit Airlines.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, $200 for a
if
flight.
You want this.
And then you get there, they charge you for your bag. They charge you for wearing shoes. They charge you for having black hair. They charge you for everything. And before you know it, it's $1,000 flight. You're like, dude, that's like trademark attorneys.
And the funny thing is, we shopped around to like 4 different attorneys, ended up going with the person who gave us the lowest quote, and they charged us just as much as the other person.
I know. For anyone out there, I still don't know the answer to this. For anyone out there who like says like, oh yeah, I trademarked for like $800. I've still never done that.
No, and the reason we know the reason. The reason is because you can send it out yourself. What you pay for is the search.
Yeah.
And if you send it out, you have to wait 6 months for it to come back. You lost that time and the time that it takes to send it out and get it back again.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that your lawyers, anybody listening that's doing a trademark, that your lawyers are good at the search, so they don't send out. Even good lawyers can sometimes miss it, and it can come back denied. Mm-hmm. So just make sure you have lawyers do a good search, send it out, and pay $10,000.
So you've had a wavy path to get to your dream, right? You're at your dream now. What is it? What's it feel like? Because I don't want, like, you're doing your dream job, but I know this as well as you do. That doesn't mean everything's easy, right? There's a lot of challenges to it, right?
Yeah.
So why don't we talk a little bit about like your life right now, the struggles that you're having in certain senses?
So let's talk about like some of the good stuff real quick. The girl I'm with, Olivia, love her. She's amazing. All that hard stuff in the past was like worth it for her, right? our company, like sometimes I still trip out that I'm the co-founder of my dream company with one of my best friends, right? So things are good, right? I don't, before I talk about challenges, I don't want to sound like I'm complaining because.
No, but people need to know though. It's like, dude, there's always challenges. Even good challenges and bad challenges, there's always challenges, right? Yeah. Even when like your life is, like I was talking to somebody the other day, I really believe this, dude, like every year, like when you're building something, it's like you always have roadblocks or speed bumps. Just some years you might have more than others, but like you always are faced with problems, you know?
So I don't need a lot for a long time. I'm totally stoked on my apartment. It's brand new. It's small. I love it. All I care about right now, I shouldn't say that. What I care about the most right now is just building AVNI, just having a good life with Olivia. I love what I do every day. I wake up and I'm pumped, and all I want to do is just build AVNI. So, I mean, that is the great part.
Yeah.
As far as challenges, I would say the biggest challenge
even like challenges like with like you, like is there challenges that like you just they're harder for you personally?
So personally, I would say this. I spent probably 8 years really angry. Like I can't even like describe the level of just, I would wake up every day at some point and just be like, I cannot believe my life turned out like this. And I'm past that now. I think what happened is for like 5 years after my mission, I just was in denial. I was just in denial. And then one day I just said, what did I do? And it all just hit me. And then once it hit me, I got really angry. And it took a long time for that to go away. And now I'm at the point where I'm starting to like enjoy life again. So personally, like I said, I just burnt out. The Mormon thing, I did too much. I burnt out. You know, I don't have any negative feelings anymore. You know, I just, my life moving forward is going to be what's best for me, you know, and that's in a very logical way. I think I made decisions before a lot, and I'm sure you saw this, based on how I felt.
Yeah.
I feel this way. I feel passionate right now. I'm going to make this decision.
Yeah, making decisions based on emotion.
Not good.
Yeah.
Not good to make this. There's always a level of, you know, gut intuition and emotion, but I made major life decisions based on that.
Yeah. And
it really hurt. So as far as like personally, like I'm finally to the point where I like feel good about life again.
Good.
As far as AVNI, I think our biggest challenge right now is transitioning. We have the agency side of the business and we have the digital product side of the business. And I think it's just scaling and booming the digital product side, which never feels like enough because there's so much that we want to do to grow. Mm-hmm. People we want to bring on, you know, people we want to pay, things we want to pay for. You know, there's a lot of things we want to do to grow. Mm-hmm. So I would say that's like the biggest challenge, but it's fun.
Yeah.
I think it's fun.
So if you had to tell I know you're not gonna be able to go back and say like, don't go on your mission, but if you could go all the way back there from like you being back from your mission and trying to figure out what to do, and we talked about you wasting a lot of time doing things that weren't for you.
Yeah.
If you could go back to there now, what would be like the ultimate advice you would tell them? Or kids right now going through it, out of college, out of high school, trying to figure out what to do. What would you tell them?
Well, there's a few components of that. I remember like being so diehard at church that there was always like the families that would come in and then you would be like, oh, you're not like fully committed. And like, it's so insane for me to even think that now. But now I look at it and I go, you know what? That's kind of a good approach in the sense of have caution. Don't be an addict about it. Like I watched this documentary about this cult. And this woman literally this was Jonestown, Jim Jones. When the cops came for him, she literally stabbed and killed her 2 children so they could go to heaven, right? And then killed herself. She stabbed her own children so they could go to heaven. That's crazy, right? So I look at it and I think, don't do anything that is self-destructive, because a lot of those emotional decisions were self-destructive. Be more logical about my decisions. And if I could go back, what I would do is I would be a lot less extreme. The only things that I do regret that I've done were like very social things. So now, like, even though I don't go to church, I'm very private about anything to do with religion or beliefs or anything. I don't get political. I'm very quiet about it.
Yeah.
So if I was to say, I would have taken a different approach and just continued to build on my skateboarding career and just continued to build on it. And I would also say to that second phase, pick the thing that you want to do and suffer through it. Whatever you have to do, suffer through it. I look back at the years that I spent skateboarding, even when I was making $0. I was in the street, it was raining, I was literally falling on my face, bleeding with a concussion, but I loved every second of it, right? You suffer, I think, suffer through the things that are worth it to you. Find something that's worth it and suffer through that.
Yeah.
And to reiterate, don't waste time doing things that people may not be able to do what they want right now, but you can do something that gets you to where you want to go in the long run.
Yeah. Driving
Uber didn't get me there. Being a server didn't get me there. Making videos did help get me there. Even though I wasn't that good at it, I'm not a filmmaker. It helped with digital marketing, which is where I want to go.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say.
Right. Well, dude, that was an exciting path to get here, man. I feel like I was side by side the whole way.
Yeah, dude. I know, man, you've probably seen it more than anyone. And it's crazy to think about, like when we would, isn't it fun to think about when we get skateboarding, like going skateboarding, just we would get in the car and go drive around with our friends all day, and you got paid a lot of money to do that.
Yeah, it was cool.
The lifestyle part of it,
yeah, it was awesome.
It just like almost can't be matched. I think pro surfing would be similar because you go to like an exotic beach, but so those were definitely good memories of traveling around the U.S. and being in a van and just hanging out with your friends.
What's up with you? What's up with your social game, man?
I got to step it up. I have some ideas I'm going to talk to you about. Yeah, so just for anybody.
Because I was about to say, like, where can we find you, man? And then I was like, shit, I'm just going to just blow it out here, man. Like,
well, so I'll say something, and it'll be interesting to watch what I actually do, like looking back. So this is what I think. My hang up, and just so anybody, like, to give context, we're talking about my Instagram. I don't post that much anymore because I used to post skateboarding. So Mikey's gone through the transition of figuring out what he wants to do. So for me, I don't want to do the standard, like, here's me with my arms folded and a quote saying, go get it. Like, I just can't do it. But what I have realized is that I kind of want to make it more entertainment based, more light. AVNI's serious. AVNI's like getting your goals, and I don't think I want to do that with my personal brand.
You want to like create a TikTok account?
A TikTok? I don't know TikTok. What's another one?
It's like, is that the TikTok? They do like, there's like videos, but it's like kids doing it. It's like under 18 platform. It's all like funny and like creative, whatever.
Olivia always sends me hoe tweets.
Okay.
Hoe tweets. But yeah, because I think like the seriousness on Instagram, like I think it's, and I may end up doing something serious, but I'm going to step up my social game. That's one of my things I need to do this year. And Mikey keeps getting on me for it, but I just don't want to do something that I don't like, and I haven't found anything that I like. I love AVNI. We just redid our Instagram. I love AVNI. So yeah.
So Eric's running the AVNI account. So where can people find you on AVNI?
At Eric Bork, ERICBORK. And I actually have like 13,000 YouTube subs. I don't really do that anymore, but I probably at some point will. But yeah, and then AVNI, at AVNI Intelligence, man. Check that out. So yeah, that's it. And the last thing we should talk about before we end is just how rad AVNI is. Like,
okay. All right.
That's like I guess the one thing that I just want
like high key flex on it. Like, yo, we're the shit.
Like, let's just
yo, man, our brand's dope.
Our shit's dope. No, just like what we're doing moving forward. So it's pretty exciting is what I meant to say, is that we're building out products for people who want to do digital marketing. We have a couple products coming out to help people do digital marketing and basically do what you want with online. It's, to me, I'm so excited about it because it's what's transformed my life.
Yeah.
So for anybody listening that's like trying to figure out what to do, the coolest thing about digital marketing is no matter what you do, you could be into painting weird things on the wall and you could build a following and sell them, right? Fitness, food, whatever you're into, digital marketing applies to it all.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah.
So to me, that's the most exciting thing in the world, is because I now do what I want because of digital marketing.
Yeah.
It's just, to me, that's so exciting. So yeah, I would say that, and then that's kind of what I'm excited about right now. So yeah.
Great. Well, then I'm gonna. You want me to close this thing down? Or you want to close
shut
it down? All right. Well, thank you for being on our show.
You usually don't have to do this.
No, I don't. Well, if you want to check out our academy that pretty much or did transform Eric's life, we have our Tech Workers Academy, and you could see that at avnidigital.com. That's right?
That's the right one.
Okay.
That's the right one.
Dude, that was awesome to tell your story and flashback on the last 20 years of our lives. And we'll just, I guess, end it there. You want to end it with anything strong or powerful or what?
That's it, man. Go get it.
That's a wrap?
Yeah, go get it. That's a wrap.
All right.